7:30 to anybody else? Everyone survived the time change. We were talking about it a few minutes ago, but it was so dark this morning. I don't know if about you, but my kids were like, I'm not getting up. I'm like, yeah, you are. Like, get up. You like it? No, I like the fall one where we get an extra hour and it's dark earlier. It's hard to trick your children into going to bed early when it's still light out. Mhm. Yeah, mine were not happy about it yesterday. We always do that. We always start it like on Saturday. We started a day early. So they were like doing relaxing time and all of a sudden an hour like skipped and they're like, what do you mean it's bedtime? I'm like, bedtime, right? It's time to go to bed. Right. And then that way on Sunday, they're like, they wake up at like the right time. We'll see. We'll see how it goes, right? It's always hard to wake up when it's dark, but we're here. I'm glad you're here. We're in the middle of of this chapter, but I want to talk for a few minutes about our guest speaker before we get back into this. And I have slides for chapter 7, but again, I had them cover it, right? So our guest speakers were kind of covering this chapter of suicide and suicide prevention. And I would just love to get your thoughts and your reactions and just kind of talk about it a little bit. And this is between us. It doesn't have to go to them in any way, but what did you think? Helpful, not helpful?
It was a very, very politically correct, toned down version of what I got from 9 years.
Okay, right, yeah, and and obviously, this is actually, it's a nationwide program. The QPR is like an official training that they do, and there's a lot of like rules about what they can say and not say. Any other thoughts? I mean, what do you think? Like it, didn't like it, helpful? Again, this is between us, yeah.
It's important to know, just because suicide, I feel like has gone up a
Yeah.
lot. You know, and a lot of it's scary because a lot of people sometimes don't verbalize it. So kind of being able to tell like, oh, that was kind of odd, and being able to apply it. And it made me think of like some things that my friends have said in the past and have scared me. So like going forward, if my friends say something that might be a joke, but might not be, like I'm just speak up. I think it's important for everybody to know.
Yeah, thank you. And it's hard sometimes to know how serious somebody's being, right? Like I have people in my family who will say stuff like, oh my God, I'm just gonna kill myself, right? Like they say it so casually, and I know they don't mean it. And it's something that I've tried to work on with some of them of like, please like don't say that if that's not where you're at, because I'm going to take you seriously. But it's nice to know some of those signs and those symptoms and those cues, right? Even if you're not sure how serious they are, it's nice to be able to identify them. Yeah.
I liked it because it wasn't just like suicide prevention talk where they tell you about the importance of suicide prevention.
Yeah. Right.
They actually gave us tools to be like, if you have someone in your life who might be suicidal, like this is like concrete thing.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And those numbers that they gave you at the end, they were up on a slide and then also on the little cards in the handout. Those numbers are really helpful. That crisis text line is really, really like a wonderful resource. A lot of people don't like to talk on the phone. And so rather than calling a line, you can text, and you can do that at any time of day. It's totally anonymous. And I think that's a really great one to have. And then there's ones that are specific for different populations, but that text crisis number is something that I think is a great resource. Yeah.
The guy who attempted yesterday at my job, and I
Wow.
gave him the little like I took a copy of the card and gave it to him.
Yeah.
And he was like, and I was talking about it, I was like, are you gonna work to compensate or anything? Like after this, he's like, well, I'm on a 5150, so we're like, okay, we'll talk to them and see if there's any resources outside the hospital. And he's like, okay, I will, thanks for the numbers. All right. That's one step forward.
Yeah, it's nice to have them, right? And if you didn't know, 5150, I know that term is something I think a lot of you probably heard, but if you didn't know, it's the legal term or the legal code for holding somebody for up to 72 hours because they're a threat to themselves or a threat to somebody else. So they're either suicidal or they're maybe threatening someone. You can have someone held for up to 72 hours against their will, which gets a little complicated if they're a minor. But you can have that done if somebody is at risk of hurting themselves or somebody else. Yeah. Yeah.
there's one guy which was getting really going on first, and he's suffering motivation, so he keeps calling my dad and saying, he's coming up and stuff, so my dad hasn't text.
Yeah, yeah, it's tough. It's not an easy thing to do, like on either side, or to have done to you, but the intent is to protect you, right? So if we hold you, then you can't harm yourself or harm somebody else during that time. I know a lot of you, it's probably true of most, if not all of you, and I think she asked this, but how many of you have known someone who's either been suicidal or attempted suicide or even completed suicide, just by showing hands, right? A lot of you, myself included, right? This is a tough topic. So I appreciate that you were here. Almost every single one of you was here, which I think is fantastic. And my personal philosophy with suicidality has always been to overreact, because I can forgive. I feel like somebody will forgive me for caring too much, but can I forgive myself for not doing enough? Right. That's always been my personal philosophy. So, I mean, in the time that I've been here, I've walked close to 20 students to the health center. I mean, I've been here 13 years full time, but like close to 20 students who have been suicidal over to get help. When I was a therapist, when I was training to be a therapist, somebody was talking about those no suicide contracts. That's a thing, right? As silly as it sounds, I would have clients sign something saying, I will not hurt myself or take my life before I see you next. Right. And it sounds like that would be unhelpful, but the fact that they committed to it sometimes is enough, right? For them to wait, or I will do X if something comes up and I feel like I'm going to hurt myself, having like a plan in mind. But I think it's always better to overreact. Like she said, nobody will be mad at you. I don't think that's true. I've had people be pretty angry with me for overreacting, but I can deal with that. I'd rather than be mad at me and alive than, than not mad at me and not here anymore. Right. So I've always kind of leaned on the side of overreacting, getting people help, or at least checking in with them, just to make sure that I've done enough. Right. Because I don't want that. That was my least favorite part of being a therapist, just to be honest, just worrying about people who were suicidal. Are they going to show up next time? Right. I would lose sleep over it because, you care about people. I care about people too much, which is why I didn't stay as a therapist. It was hard for me to keep those boundaries. But I think it's better to do too much and kind of take people too seriously than did you have your?
Yeah, so my section PB sign closed when I started seeing her 3 years ago, and
Yeah.
every year she needs to let me sign it.
Mhm.
And every time like I start having those thoughts, she makes me have a verbal contact with her. And
Yeah.
I'm like, well, kind of makes me accountable. Like, it
Yeah.
feel like I have to be here because I told me what it was. And that's like, I would feel bad.
Right.
If I was to look for myself or do anything before I saw you guys.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, give a couple of thoughts. Well, and she gave me some quote. She's like, I don't care if it's like 2 in the morning.
Mhm.
I probably be asleep at 2 in the morning, but I'll keep that in mind.
Right. Yeah. And that's amazing. Right. And like you said, it's an accountability, right? You would feel bad. Right. And it's just that one extra little layer sometimes is enough for people to wait. Right. And suicide is difficult, like suicidal feelings that when people are depressed, and there's such a correlation between depression and suicidality, you don't think clearly, right? Remember the image she showed of the two different brains, right? One of them is lit up and active and functioning. The other one is very like muted in a way. When we're depressed, we don't think right? We have that very black and white, overgeneralized thinking. Sometimes people can't see beyond the moment and they get consumed with thoughts of like, it's never going to get better. And that's where the suicidality piece comes from. I wanted to mention something. I kept thinking this as she was going through this presentation. I don't know if any of you have heard of DBT or CBT, right? So CBT is cognitive behavioral therapy. We mentioned it earlier in the semester. And then there's something called DBT, which is dialectical behavioral therapy, which we'll talk a little bit more about in chapter 13. But they have this section within like cognitive behavioral therapy called tip skills. And this is a really interesting like distress tolerance thing that is gaining a lot of popularity. It's been around for years. But when people are in extreme distress, right, which could be suicidality or it could be just anxiety, it could be anything. These are skills that can change your state of mind quickly, right? And one of them is temperature, right? So it's TIP stands for temperature, intense exercise, paced breathing, and progressive muscle relaxation. So if you're ever in a state of like panic, extreme depression, or even suicidality, you can pull yourself out of it short term quickly using these skills. Now they work, like we had to try these. as part of our program. And they're not the most pleasant things, but they will pull you out. They activate your sympathetic nervous system and they will actually pull you out of that state. So temperature, you can change the temperature of your body quickly, and that will actually like pull you out of a mental state. So what they often recommend is like putting your face in ice cold water, right? And just for a matter of seconds, but it causes that fight or flight response and it jolts you out of a state. Now it's not going to last, but it will last for enough time that maybe you think clearly enough to pull out of it for a few minutes. So really, really cold water, a very, very hot shower or very, very cold shower would also do that. Intense exercise. Exercise causes you to release a lot of endorphins. It activates your sympathetic nervous system. So if you find yourself in a state of extreme depression, you can try these things, or breathing. Your breathing can kind of pull you in or out of a different state. So these are just kind of some interesting skills that I just kept thinking in the back of my mind that it might be nice to mention. If you look it up, tip skills, right? They are very commonly suggested for people who are in like extreme emotional states, or just having a plan, right? Maybe that's, I'm going to call this person or I'm going to text this person. There's a lot of little things you can do. Just being around for somebody is sometimes enough, right? Like texting them, checking in with them, not leaving them alone, telling them, hey, I'd miss you if you were gone. Now, and I grew up with a mom who was intensely suicidal. My mom attempted suicide so many times as a kid, intense bipolar disorder. And I worry about her on certain days of the year. Like a couple of days ago was the anniversary of my dad's death. And that's a day where like, I feel like I worry about her so much because I know it's a trigger, right? And at people who have emotional triggers, those are days where you really want to be present for them as much as you can be anyway, while also maintaining your safety and your well-being as well. Yeah.
Exercise.
They're not a tip skill, but they are important, right? That would be within the cognitive behavioral framework. So grounding might be like you close your eyes and you focus on 5 sounds that you can hear.
Yeah, my therapist works with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, okay, close your eyes, take yourself to like a calming, happy
Mhm.
place, and I'll tell 5 things you can see.
Yes.
Smell
Mhm.
and stuff.
Yeah, and those are more commonly used for anxiety to ground you, but it can definitely work here too, right? If you're so caught up in your head, doing something to kind of ground you to the world around you can be really, really helpful, right? And if you know somebody well, you can probably recognize some of those signs and symptoms, but hopefully it was a little bit helpful. Are there any other things that you liked or didn't like? Any other the kind of general comments here? Anything else? You lucked out the role plays were brief. Sometimes those go for like 20 minutes. You got the like lucky like 3-minute speed version, right? Yeah.
So I thought that was really helpful. I like the whole presentation and having that certificate. It helped me go to the student center myself and start looking for therapy.
Okay.
I think it's pretty cool because I didn't know where it was first off.
Yeah.
And then Michigan for the education office. And it's just really nice to give information that like, it's general, but they're in the class.
Yeah, and you do as a student, you get up to, it's like 6 to 8 sessions, it depends. But 6 to 8 free therapy sessions as a student. Like if you're, I say free, you paid for it, it's a built-in like fee. But take advantage of those. I mean, even if it's just going to talk, it could be dealing with anxiety, it could be test anxiety, it could be depression, it could be anything. You can go do that for free. Did anyone go get chapstick? Or
Yeah,
you mentioned,
right here.
Yeah, you even have it in your hand. I
Yeah.
love it. Right.
Bomb, by the way.
What is that?
It's good.
It's good,
It's
right?
legit.
She lived up to the promise, huh? Yeah, they have all sorts of stuff. It's not super related to our class, but you can get free condoms and like
Yeah.
you can get Advil, you can get chapstick, right? You can get all sorts of things, right? So take advantage of those resources, hold on to those phone numbers or those text numbers, right? Those are, I think, really, really helpful. If you want to know more about these, you could look this up, but I did want to just at least mention it. I think it's super relevant. And then make sure you look over, the slides on this. So I'm not going to lecture on chapter 7. Definitely know what QPR stands for. What does QPR stand for? Anyone remember? What's the Q? Question, piece, persuade, and refer, not response. People sometimes go with response, but refer, right? So question, persuade, refer. I will definitely ask you that on the next exam, but make sure you look over this chapter. We're not going to cover it. I think that they covered it really well. And make sure you put those, that certificate, that QPR training, put it on an application. Put it on a job like application, on a school resume, right? Any of that, it will be helpful for you. Any little thing to set yourself apart. Yeah. Nice, nice. I love it. Yeah, any little thing that can set you apart, right? Like, especially if it's something within the field of psychology, you know, or just dealing with people. It's a handy skill to have. Yeah. Amazing, right? Love it. I love it. Yeah.
And I put it in, and they're like, with between the AA and social behavior and this, they're like, we might just have you as like consider those patients will come in on like
Yeah.
a 5150 or anything else, like you can be there and like help them through it. And I was like, okay.
Great. Yeah, that's amazing, right? Yeah, having those things as a resource, it's helpful. Again, any little thing that can help you to stand out. So I'm going to move on from this, but I just wanted to take a few moments to kind of to talk about it a little bit. And then we'll go back to where we were before, which was talking about mood disorders and bipolar disorder and all of that. So I have in my notes that we left off here, like we talked a little bit about mania and bipolar disorder, but not the types yet, right? Does that sound familiar? Okay. So just as like a quick review, right? We talked about with bipolar disorder that people can have alternating periods of like really up mood, which would be mania, and really down mood, which would be depression, right? So we have those manic episodes, and then we have depressive episodes, and oftentimes normal mood in between. This can be something where people have like a depressed episode and have multiple depressed episodes, and then lots of normal time, and then maybe a random manic episode somewhere. It doesn't have to be back to back. I think we tend to think of bipolar disorder as somebody who like, almost like someone who's experiencing like the laugh cries, right? Have you ever seen that where somebody like is laughing so hard that they then start crying? It's like you're way up and then you crash. It's different from that, right? That's a kind of a normal like biological reaction that can happen. These are longer cycles. Remember, depression is 2 weeks and mania is 5 days, right? So these are longer cycles that people are showing. Now you can be what's called a rapid cycler where you go through them quicker. But the traditional presentation is one followed by another, right? And a little bit of a gap in between. Now we have two different types of bipolar, which is why we no longer call it manic depression, right? And we changed that years ago. Bipolar 1 is somebody who has full manic episodes and full major depressive episodes. So bipolar 1 is more severe, right? It's full mania, full depression, right? It's the more severe of the two. Bipolar 2 is a little bit less intense in terms of the mania. The depression is the same, but people have what's called hypomania instead of mania. And hypomania, hypomania is like mania light, right? It's like all those symptoms of mania, but on a lesser degree. And sometimes hypomanic episodes can actually be really productive for people. If you're able to harness it, you sleep a little less, you have a little bit inflated self-esteem, but it's not as damaging. Sometimes people have been able to harness this, like a lot of artists and like musicians who have bipolar disorder. If you have a hypomanic episode, it's not as destructive, but bipolar 1 is definitely more severe. So this is the kind of lesser version, but it's definitely still impacting. The only difference is the mania is a little bit less with someone who has bipolar 2. Cyclothymic disorder is somebody who has like a lot of kind of ups and downs, right? Just like that one we talked about with depression, cyclothymic disorder is over the course of 2 years. Someone who has like hypomania and mild depression. So they've kind of got like these little lows and highs, very commonly missed. This could just easily be missed for like personality and normal mood variations, but it's someone who's kind of struggling with the ups and downs on a lesser level over the course of 2 years or more, right? So it's much longer lasting and less severe. Okay, so these are kind of the main presentations: bipolar 1, bipolar 2, and then like a longer lasting, milder version called cyclothymic disorder. And I think I mentioned different people, right? When somebody's in a manic episode, they're on the extreme on one end, and then they cycle to depression and it's the extreme opposite. It's going to be a difficult one to navigate as a friend or a partner or a family member. A lot of you said you knew someone with bipolar. Any stories or comments or thoughts? Anything related to people in your lives or anything? Yeah. Mhm.
And she got really paranoid at one point and was telling me that I was like talking as she liked, and then I was like a horrible friend who like all the face and like 6 months and like refused to talk to me. And then her ex was like, "You're being crazy." Like she was like your actual friend. She came back and she's like, "I'm really sorry. Like I shouldn't have done that." And I was like, "It's water under the bridge. Like trying to worry about it." But she like goes through cycles where she'll be like, one day she'll be like really friendly, and the next day she'll be like, "I don't want to talk to you."
Yeah. And that's tough, right? Like as a friend, as someone in their life, right? That's hard to navigate. You don't know which one you're gonna get, right? Which can be a little hard.
Yeah, like I'm always like really nice to her. And I was like, "It's like water under the bridge." And she's like, "Honestly, like I don't know what I do without it."
Yeah, and trying to be patient and like, kind about it is sometimes the best that we can do. Not always easy though, right? Yeah.
The boyfriend's sister is bipolar one, and like her family's like kind of a good trigger for her.
Mhm.
And she can get kind of aggressive and like a few instances where like her neighbors call the cops and don't think she's like throwing things at her boyfriend and her sister. Yeah, it's scary for her.
Yeah, in a manic episode, sometimes people can get very like aggressive and violent, or it can be like reckless and impulsive. It can manifest in a lot of ways. It can even be so severe that people have hallucinations, right, when they're in a manic state. It's not super common, but it can happen where people hallucinate because they're so agitated that it can lead to actually, perceiving things that aren't even there. Any other thoughts or comments? Yeah. It would more be that, like, so let's say you might be diagnosed with bipolar 2, and then you have like a full-blown manic episode, they would then change it to bipolar. So it could be that your diagnosis changes. Traditionally, if you've ever had a manic episode, they would put you at bipolar. So it could be that you are like 2 for a long time, and then, your episode is so severe that they change it to it. So it could kind of be that it changes over time, or that you might alternate between manic and hypomanic episodes. Anybody else? Other thoughts, questions? Anything else? Anything else on this one? Let's talk about some causes and treatments of bipolar disorder. So just like with depression, neurotransmitters play a really big role, right? So the same neurotransmitters we talked about with dopamine, norepinephrine, serotonin, right? All of those playing a big role in depression, they play a big role here as well. But it's thought that you can go on either side, right? You can have too much activity or not enough activity, right? So not enough activity, not enough of them leading to things like depression, too much leading to things like mania. And sometimes you see this with antidepressants when you watch like the commercials and listen to the side effects. Some of them can actually cause manic episodes for the first time because they flood you with so much serotonin or norepinephrine or dopamine that people all of a sudden have a manic episode for the first time in their life, right? And it wouldn't necessarily be diagnosed because it might be the result of the drug, but you might see that with some of those drugs. And your neurotransmitters are very delicate, right? So if they go too far in either direction, you definitely see effects, right? So we see that the neurotransmitters, the same ones that played a role in depression, play a role here. But then we add one other interesting element, and this comes back when we get to the treatments, but your ions, right? So when our neurons communicate with each other, it's an electrochemical communication process. There's an electrical piece and a chemical piece. The electrical piece has to do with ions. The chemical piece, neurotransmitters, right? So both of them are thought to play a role here. It's thought that there might be something where your neurons are firing too easily or too stubbornly, depending on the concentration of these ions around your neurons, right? And in that realm in your nervous system. So when we get to the treatments, we'll see this come back a little bit. It kind of shapes one of the treatments for bipolar disorder because it's thought that they do play a little bit of a role. We also see some brain structures, right? Like the basal ganglia and the cerebellum, but we don't quite know the role of them yet. What we see is in things like CAT scans and MRIs, there's slight differences in these parts of the brain. But what that means, we're not sure, right? Did the bipolar disorder cause that, or did these cause the bipolar disorder? A little bit difficult to determine, but it's definitely an area of future study. And then there's a lot of genetics. This runs in families, just like depression, right? So when somebody biologically related to you has depression or bipolar disorder, you are a little bit more vulnerable, like a biological parent or sibling. You would be a little bit more vulnerable, like 27% or something like that, than the average person. So a lot of biological stuff. This is a very biologically driven disorder. And then the treatments are very biologically driven too.
I have a friend who like is a recovering addict and they have bipolar. Do you think it would like be more of a genetic thing, like with the addiction, or like if they actually had like bipolar in their genes?
It could be, and addiction is a little bit genetic too, right? And you see so much comorbidity, meaning occurring together between people who have things like bipolar disorder and substance abuse. Because what happens is people self-medicate, right? And so it often becomes a case of figuring out, did the drug use come first or the bipolar come first? And which one do we try and stop to help with the other? And it gets so tricky, right? Because it's hard to sometimes figure that out. But they both have a genetic component, right? So it could be that both of them are inherited, both of them are shaping each other. That's pretty common, sadly.
Yeah.
Right? For treatment, right, medication is probably the most common, right? And what we do is we give people drugs called mood stabilizing drugs, right? So when people have bipolar disorder, we're trying to stabilize their mood with a medication. And so what we're trying to do is take someone who's going like this, right? They're having like ups and downs and ups and downs, and the normal mood in between. A mood stabilizer is going to kind of put them more in the middle, right? It brings the highs down and the lows up, right? To kind of put you more flat in the middle, stabilize your mood, kind of mellow it out a little bit. These drugs are pretty effective, but they have a lot of side effects. And a lot of people struggle with how it makes them feel very like numb or blunted, because it's taking your mood and just basically like squishing it down into the middle. And so for some, they might struggle with that as well. And these drugs are much more effective at treating mania than depression. So what you might end up with is a drug like lithium or others, along with an antidepressant. So you might end up on more than one medication to try and treat this. But the most common mood stabilizing drug is a drug called lithium. Lithium is actually a metallic element. Any science people in here, right? It's on the periodic table, right? It is a naturally occurring element. It's a mineral salt. Now your ions, which we just talked about a moment ago, the mineral salts, right, affect the positive ions that we have in our system. So it's thought that lithium is actually affecting you on like an ion neurotransmitter kind of level, and affecting the communication between your neurons, right? Which is why it's proposed to work. It's incredibly, it builds up in your system very quickly. And so people who take lithium have to be monitored with blood tests regularly. You often have to do this monthly or even like bi-monthly, because it can cause a lot of issues if you have too much of it in your system. It's a very kind of dangerous drug to have out of balance. It can cause tremors and like Parkinsonian-like symptoms. You can also get lithium toxicity and it can be fatal, right? So you have to monitor this very carefully, but it can be incredibly helpful for people who are struggling with bipolar disorder by bringing those highs down a little bit. Yeah.
Like across the board better for mania, or is that mostly just with and like
Yeah.
the rest of, since they're a little newer, like are those a little more effective for depression and mania, or
It's almost universal that they're better with the mania, right, piece, but there are some of the newer ones, like Abilify is like a newer one as well, that are a little bit better at treating both sides. But it's really common that people end up taking something like lithium and an antidepressant, just because it doesn't help the lows nearly as much. And so then now you're adding two drugs and you have to really find that delicate balance. But some people do okay with just one, but it's pretty common to end up with more than one, unfortunately. Yeah. Sure. It could be, right? And anytime that you're misdiagnosed and put on a drug for that, right? Like if you don't have those symptoms, it could make them worse, or it could just be have no effect, really.
Yeah.
If someone isn't struggling with manic episodes and they take lithium, it might not do much of anything for them, sadly.
Yeah, my mom told my psychiatrist when I was like 13, 14 that I had bipolar, they put me on a stabilizing drug.
Yeah.
And I was just like angry all the time. Like,
Yeah.
I had no other emotions and they took me off of it and I like went back to normal.
Yeah.
And at 18, they're like, we don't have any signs of bipolar, we don't see any of that.
Yeah.
And they put me on an antidepressant and I've been doing fine since and they're like, got really highly misdiagnosed, like they put me
Yeah.
on a medication.
And that happens a lot, especially for teenagers. Okay, so think about the teenage years, right? The teenage years, your main goal is forming an identity. It's a lot of like instability, right? And some people, their teenagers, super smooth sailing, but a lot of people, not the case, right? Definitely not the case for me. My teenagers were like a mess, right? My poor parents. But a lot of people go through ups and downs as a teenager, as you're like trying to develop, your brain isn't fully developed. So it's actually very strongly encouraged to not diagnose people with things like bipolar disorder as a teenager. Now it happens a lot, right? Anyway, but then what you see is people go on medication and it doesn't help, or it makes it worse, or in different directions, like you were saying with anger, because teenagers' brains don't respond the same way. And if you listen to any drug commercial, they almost always say like, may make it worse for teens and young adults, not meant for people under the age of 18, right? So common because the brain of someone who is in their teen years doesn't respond the same way as an adult. So in an ideal world, we try not to medicate, but sometimes people have such severe, struggles that they require some help.
Yeah.
But it's usually not as effective.
She's like, I've seen you for almost 4 years. She's like,
Yeah.
working with people that are bipolar. She's
Yeah.
like, you are not, I can't believe they did that. And I said, well,
Yeah. Yeah, it's so common, unfortunately, and I'm nodding because I've heard that story so many times, right? That people often get really misdiagnosed and then they hold on to that label, right? Like if you're as a teenager, you're told you have bipolar disorder, you hold on to that. It becomes like almost like a badge, part of who you are. And then it might be that it was completely inappropriate, which you learn later. Did you have a thought too? Yeah.
so do you take these medications like consistently, like daily?
Usually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And some of them have like a longer release, like an extended release, where you can take one a week or one a day. Sometimes there's injections, even if some medications have like an injectable version. More common for antidepressants than this, but some of them are a little bit longer lasting because what happens notoriously with people who have bipolar disorder is like, oh, I'm feeling pretty good, I don't need those meds, right? And then you crash because you stop taking them. Sadly, antidepressants and mood stabilizers have to be taken really consistently. If you stop taking them, they stop working. So people oftentimes crash because they're like, oh, I'm feeling fine, I don't need it. Or I'm too depressed, I don't care enough to take it, right? And then oftentimes it can be really disastrous. And then people will self-medicate like, oh, I didn't take any yesterday, I'll take 3 times as much today. That doesn't work either, right? So they're trying to come up with more drugs that are like injectable, that would have a longer lasting like outcome, right? Which would be amazing for someone who might need that. Therapy can be helpful, obviously, as well. And we mentioned cognitive behavioral therapy earlier and trying to kind of learn ways to cope with this. But traditionally, people who have severe bipolar disorder require medication, at least to help them get a little bit balanced. And then maybe therapy on top of that. And it might be that you take a drug for a time and then you can go off of it. A lot of people will take an antidepressant for months or maybe even a year or two, and then they can kind of go off of it and be okay. Others might have to take it forever, right? It just kind of depends on the person. Sometimes our bodies kind of self-correct a little bit, and you don't have to stay on them for a long time. There's a lot of things that have been like commented about lithium, a lot of songs about lithium too. I have one for you that I'll play. There's a couple, one's better than the others. Like Nirvana has a song about lithium, but Evanescence sang a song about lithium that is, I think, really, really visually and also like in terms of the lyrics, very, very like descriptive of what a lot of people struggle with. So I want to play the video for you and the song. Listen to the lyrics, but like the video is also very visually impacting. But what I love about this song is she kind of talks about how people struggle with this drug, like they become dependent on it. And then they struggle with the fact that it almost takes away who they are a little bit, right? Like if you're used to the ups and downs and now you're flat in the middle, people feel like zombie-like, right? Or feel like they've lost a little bit of who they are. I think, as I said, of that struggle that a lot of people have with this drug. So what I want you to do just for a minute, with a couple of people around you, right? Just kind of talk about it for just a minute. I don't know what I just pushed there. Hold on. Like, oh, it gave me a keypad. Okay, we'll just sit in the dark for a second while it resets. But I want you to find a couple of people around you, just kind of talk for a minute about what do you think she's saying about the drug and her relationship with it. And then we can talk about it together. So just a couple of people around you for a moment while I try and see if I can turn those lights back on. It's kind of peaceful, but still. So take just a couple of minutes and then we'll go from there. There we go. That's fine.
I don't know if that's how we're.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry, I hate stepping out on you. But my kids' school called 3 times to tell them that my daughter was crying and didn't want to be there. Right? I know, but she at school. I'm like, okay, we all feel that way on some level, right? So she didn't feel well all weekend, and so she told them she threw up last night, which was a lie. And she told them she had a fever, which was a lie. Like, And so they're like, she has a fever and she threw up, she needs to go home. And I'm like, no.
Is this
no.
not what we're
Did they take
Yeah, and no fever.
This
She's
is
fine.
This is your hypochondriac?
Yes.
That's great.
Yeah,
longer?
this is
Yeah.
good.
I love it.
Yeah, she's like, I'm sick, I can't stay here. Like,
This is overcast day.
me too. Anyway, sorry about that. Right. My partner's all like, tough shit, Paisley, stay at school, right? I'm the kinder one. All right, I was like, I guess I'll go get her. No, all right, fine. So anyway, sorry about that. But so what do you think? What is she singing about? What do you think she's saying about her relationship with this lithium, with the drug? Yeah.
It's almost like a comfort thing.
Yeah.
She wants to see herself without it, but that it's like, you're saying like ball and chain almost, like it's just like
Yeah.
attached and you like want to see yourself without it, but at the same time, there's like that great fear there.
Yeah, right. She definitely has that love, hate, that needing, but fear, right? There's a lot of that in that song, which I think is really a very common feeling people have. Did you have your
Feelings of being alone.
Yeah.
Like very isolated.
Yeah, right. And she, the fun thing about music and like poetry and any of those things, fun but frustrating. I'm a very concrete thinker, so I'm like, tell me what it means, like I want to know what it means, and that's it. But my partner teaches English, so she's good with the like abstract. But the fun thing about this is you could almost take it as she's singing the whole song to this drug, right? Like, I don't want to be alone, don't leave me alone. A lot of feelings of being alone, but the drug almost being like a crutch for her, right? In a way. What are anything else that you came up with, lyrics or thoughts, or yeah?
She feels like all of her feelings are like completely locked up and
Yeah.
she can't be herself. And I think that kind of shows like you're talking about like when she was drowning in the water and there's like she was standing on top of the water at the same time. Like there's like the two, it's the high and the low, and she's like kind of going between those two. She knows she shouldn't be off of it, but she doesn't necessarily live herself on it.
Yeah, I love that, right? And that's exactly kind of like you were saying, the same thing where she doesn't want to be off of it, but she doesn't want to be on it. I don't want to let it lay me down this time, right? Like, just the torn feelings, that love-hate relationship, so common with this drug. There was another hand, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I like that, right? Like, and not necessarily like kind of drowning, but stuck, right? Like not kind of going in either way. I like that. The video, I think, is just as descriptive as the lyrics. Yeah.
Isn't water in videos supposed to mean like change and stuff?
Mhm.
Move, like change your character or some shit.
It
And
can be.
so it's like kind of like what you were getting back to. It's like a love hate thing.
Yeah, so water, symbolically, water can represent like drowning, right? The water's rising typically like symbolizes that you're feeling overwhelmed or drowning, or change. It can mean any of those things. Like if you look at common like interpretations of what water means in dreams, for example, like it can mean those things generally. So yeah, I think it's visually descriptive that she's kind of drowning a little bit, like she's stuck, there's change, there's all these things going on for her. And I think that's a common sentiment about lithium, right? So these drugs can be incredibly helpful, but people struggle with them. Like if you've had bipolar disorder and these ups and downs define you, and you take them away, sometimes people feel lost. Like, who am I, right? If I'm not feeling anything anymore, I've gone from feeling too much to feeling nothing, and where's the middle ground? So these drugs can be incredibly helpful, but they can have some downsides too, right? And I think that song really captures some of those feelings that a lot of people have about things like lithium or other mood stabilizing drugs as well. All right. Anything else related to the mood disorders? Any other stories or questions or thoughts, comments, anything else with this chapter before we go to the next one? Yeah.
Actually, there's something about lithium. My mom was put on it for a while they thought it would help her with her depression.
Yeah.
And she ended up having a TIA stroke
Mhm.
because her brain overreacted to the drug, and
Yeah.
she ended up going like very like hyper, and she like all of a sudden couldn't talk, and like it was like we took her to the hospital and they're like, yeah, you want a TIA stroke, but you need to take this.
Yeah, right. Again, it can be so dangerous, and people will abuse lithium. Like people will purchase it and use it as like recreationally. It's such a dangerous thing to use, and it will be wildly ineffective at doing much, right? So this is definitely not one you want to mess around with, but people do. I mean, people will, experiment with any drug, but it can be very dangerous and it can cause like stroke-like symptoms or Parkinson, as I said, a lot of shaking, like tremors is very, very, very. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, why do people use a lot of drugs recreationally right now? But not really. It's actually a very ineffective, like of all the drugs to use recreationally, this is not a good one, right? It's not going to have much of a result if you don't have bipolar disorder, if you don't have manic episodes. It's probably not going to do a whole lot, but it can make you feel very sick to your stomach and cause tremors. And so people overdose on it, thinking like, oh, I just need to take more of it. When it really has a very negligible effect if you don't have. So of all the ones to abuse recreationally, this is not one to play around with, right? It doesn't have a lot of benefits to it. What was that? Xanax is a very, very powerful drug, right? Yeah, this one, well, which would affect you regardless of like your brain chemistry, but this one, not so much. Yes.
Yeah, like I have these on a stimulant for it, and I don't like when I'm honest with people about it, they're like, oh, like, would you sell it? Like, I need it for like my friends or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, oh, no, I hate having to take it, but
Right.
I won't take it.
Yeah.
And I told my therapist, and she's like, it's for you, it's empower, like,
Right.
It's calm down for them, it would like
Stimulate you.
and want them to like do everything. It's like, oh.
Yeah. Adderall and Ritalin and a lot of those of the drugs prescribed for ADHD are very commonly abused. Because what they would do is have a very stimulating effect for someone who doesn't have ADHD, right? Versus they have like a sedating, calming effect for people who do. Is that a?
Yeah, well, there's also a newer medication. Well, I don't know how new the medication is, but it's being prescribed for weight loss. But there's the diabetic, like self-injectable one. that
Yeah.
People take, and then they also prescribe like a stimulant like medication, but they evaluate you first before you go on it because they want to make sure you don't have addiction.
Yeah.
Possibly used.
Right. And a lot of weight loss medications are stimulants, right? Stimulants by nature reduce your appetite, right? And they create a lot more energy, which can help with like exercising and all those things. Yeah, they're very commonly abused for that reason, right? And a lot of the weight loss medications now that are coming out with are stimulant based or very related to diabetes a lot now as well, blood sugar. Interesting. I saw one the other day. I saw it. I almost like found it on YouTube to play for all of you because the side effects were the most absurd I've ever heard in my life. Like it literally went on and on and on. Like there was 48 seconds left of the commercial break and all 48 seconds of that were side effects. And I was like, whoa, like he had to take like 92 breaths in between saying them all. Like it was so intense and it was for weight loss, right? It was for weight loss and it was a stimulant. I'm forgetting the name of it now, but I was like, oh my gosh, I have to like capture this and play it because it was just the side effects were just through the roof, right? I mean, people want to lose weight, but at what cost for that one, right? So very common stimulants are used for weight loss, right? And they wouldn't work so well for someone who has ADHD because they might actually have the opposite effect, right? So things to weigh when you're, every pun intended, right? Things to consider, right? When you're trying to decide, right? Yeah.
Being a stimulant, is it? Can it be harmful at any point or after regular dosing?
For sure. Yeah, oh, it increases your blood pressure. It increases the rate that your heart is beating. It can make you very agitated, right? Yeah, they tend to be more short term.
It's used short term.
Yeah.
To help you change. It's your mindset. It's
Right.
supposed to almost kickstart you into a lifestyle change.
Right. They're not meant to be taken long term, but people do take them long term. Like phentermine, for example, is a very common stimulant used for weight loss. And it can have a lot of negative effects if taken long term. So it's meant to be like a short term, like let's get you started, get you into a better routine and then like, taper off. Sometimes people will take it for a very long time and it can cause heart attacks, heart problems, blood pressure problems, along with other things, anxiety. very common when people take stimulants, you experience anxiety, right? Think about if you have too much coffee, you get like jittery and you can get nervous, right? And like anxious. That happens to the extreme when you're on a stimulant. Yeah. Do you have more?
Yeah, I wanna.
Yeah, please.
So my mom is like in the medical field and she has a friend who has her own practice and she's doing this weight loss thing. And she mentioned that her friend and her daughter used it and they lost like 27 pounds.
Sure.
And I'm like, that's great, but is that healthy?
Yeah.
So I'm just.
It's okay in the short term, right? And the hard part is people take a stimulant, you lose weight, and then you go off the stimulant and you gain it right back, right? And so it's a lot of like slow, small changes. Like weight loss is frustrating. Any of you have tried to lose weight, it's frustrating, right? Like I can look at food and I gain like 2 pounds. Like it's not fair, right? It's just not. I can make a ton of effort for weeks and lose a pound and then have a bad day and gain 4. Like it's not fair, right? But what tends to happen with those is people lose that weight and their appetite is curbed. But unless they learn a better way, when they go off of it, they gain it back. Right. And this is kind of segueing over. I mean, our next topic is eating disorders, so it's appropriate, it's fine. But it's a very common thing. My father-in-law had a gastric bypass surgery, lost 200 pounds. I mean, just a ridiculous amount of weight, but he didn't learn a better way. It was just, he couldn't fit it in. And now after 4 years, his stomach has grown back again and he's gained almost all of it back. If you don't learn a healthier way, it's not going to stay off. Yeah.
Just to piggyback off that, I know, the doctors that I talked to about it, it's like if, let's say you do have a good experience, they will closely monitor you. Like,
Yeah.
do weekly check-ins versus, once a month. And then they also, like, you have to track what you're eating.
Yeah.
Because that goes hand in hand with like the medication, like they don't want to see you just take the medication.
Right.
To lose the weight, but not eat healthy or not exercise
Mhm.
or do the lifestyle change.
Right.
Because they don't want to prescribe you a drug and then, you like relapse after.
Yeah. Yeah. You want to make sure you're doing all those other things to do it properly, right? Yeah.
Two questions. Remember when or like coffee actually has an opposite effect for me. Like,
Right.
I could drink a cup of coffee right before bed and like pass out for the night. So it's kind of annoying because I don't have to use like a stimulant and it's speechless.
Very typical of people with ADHD.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Caffeine is a bitch. Like you wouldn't go to bed and literally leave a cup of coffee.
Yep.
And I'm like half on the couch.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's great. Like I hate that I have to. It's like I hate that it has the opposite.
Yeah.
I'm always just tired.
Mhm.
Like no matter what, it sucks. But,
Right.
this kind of like goes into the eating disorders because I'm on a stimulant. I have to go to my primary care physician like once every couple months for a weigh-in because I lose so much weight being on the stimulant.
Sure.
I can't eat during the day.
Mhm.
And like when I first got put on a stimulant in high school, I went from like 200 pounds down to like 120, and they like had a meltdown over it. They're like,
Yeah.
"You're in an eating disorder." I was like, "This isn't healthy." And, like, it's not what I'm doing.
Mhm.
Like this wasn't intentional. I just like can't eat.
Yeah, because stimulants naturally reduce your appetite, right? Which is why they're so addictive for people, especially someone who wants to lose weight. It can be very difficult to get off of because they're so reinforcing in that way, right? Yeah, and that's very typical of people who have ADHD tend to react opposite to caffeine and stimulants, right? My partner's the same way, can drink a cup of coffee in bed at 10 p.m. and then pass out with it in her hand. I mean, not that that would happen, but like, but literally could drink it in bed and fall asleep. Like, I think I mentioned this to you before. If I drink one after like 2, like I'm up all night. Like it's not happening unless I like take something to put me to sleep. I'm not sleeping that night.
And drink till like 5.
Yeah.
I was like, it's because I have to be in bed in like 3 hours so I can be here again tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like, that's not healthy. I'm like, isn't for you, but it's
Right.
for me.
I know it's a delicate balance, right? Like it's all a delicate balance, right? Between what helps us and what hurts us and the side effects of it. It's a lot of balancing, isn't it? So it kind of, like I said, kind of a segue a little bit. We're talking about, stimulants and weight loss. Our next topic is eating disorders, and this will take us a couple of days, and then substance abuse disorders are after that. So we'll just get started just a little bit, since we have about 15 minutes or so left, but we'll talk about some of the common eating disorders. So anorexia and bulimia. There's also a newer one added in the last DSM called binge eating disorder. We'll talk about that. We'll look at some causes, we'll look at some treatments. These are a very difficult group of disorders, relatively common. A lot of people struggle with eating. And the tricky thing about eating disorders is think how often a day you're hungry. Think how often we have to eat in order to survive, right? Like, and food gets complicated. The reasons that we eat aren't always so simple as like, I'm hungry, right? A lot of us eat for other reasons. Super easy example. How many of you eat when you're bored? Just by show of hands.
Yeah.
I am so guilty of this, right? Or like when I'm grading, like over the weekend, I was grading papers for one of my other classes. I ate an entire carton of goldfish without even realizing it. I just reached in to grab another and I'm like, oh, they're gone. Oops, right? Like, you know, like, and it's easy. It was like mindless. I didn't even realize I was doing it. How many of you go out to eat to celebrate something good happening? Right? Yeah, I do. Always. I don't even need an excuse. My family growing up, it was like, let's get a cake. For no reason, like whatsoever. Like it's Tuesday, let's get a cake, right? It was awful. Like, and that's my mentality about cake. I'd be like, it's Tuesday, let's go. Why not, right? It's Wednesday, who cares? So eating to celebrate. A lot of us eat when we're sad, right? When we're trying to cope with something, we eat. We go out to eat to celebrate. Food's a big part of customs and holidays and traditions. I won't go to a movie if there's not popcorn and a soda and candy. Like, what's the point? Like, I'll see any movie. I don't care the movie. If I get all those snacks, right? The holidays are all about food, right? Like I have a lot of like food related things. I wouldn't say I have an eating disorder, but I might have some problematic relationships with food. I can own that, especially cake. But there's a lot of complicated reasons behind eating. It's not as simple as like, I'm hungry, I'm full, I eat, I stop. There's a lot of reasons that people eat or don't eat, and those can definitely shape your propensity or likelihood toward getting an eating disorder. So with eating disorders, we're looking at significant disturbances in eating, right? And this can be that you eat or maybe even refuse to eat in order to satisfy like a psychological or psychic need and not a physical one. So maybe you eat despite the fact that you're full. You eat to the point of being uncomfortably full and you end up throwing up from it. Or you're so hungry, but you don't eat because you don't want to gain weight, right? Both of those are things that happen. Or you get in these cycles where you eat way too much and then you get rid of it. Right? And then you feel guilty about it afterward, right? There's a lot of complicated things happening with eating disorders, and people stop listening to their body, right? Your body's telling you you're hungry or you're full, and you don't pick up those signals, or maybe even you become unaware of them at some point because you're so used to ignoring them. So what we see with this, again, is that like it isn't always just due to hunger or being full that we eat or don't eat. It can get very complicated. And these disorders have a very, very high rate of relapse. People, when they get stressed or like life events happen, they tend to relapse into this. They're difficult to treat because of how often we need to eat food in order to survive, right? If you don't eat, it will literally kill you. It takes some time, but you need to eat to live, which can make this a little bit complicated. So there are, as I mentioned, kind of two main eating disorders that we'll talk about, and then one kind of newer one. But I have a little excerpt from a documentary I want to play for you just to kind of introduce this. There's a couple of great documentaries. This one's a little older, but it's a good one. It's called Thin. And so I want to play you about like, it's, I think 6 or 7 minutes. And it just kind of introduces this. If you haven't known anyone who has an eating disorder, I think it's a good way to start thinking about it. So I'll play this for you if you wanted to know more. But I think it gives you a really nice, like, human perspective of what this can look like for people. You know, she has that part where she draws an image of herself and then they trace her. You can see how much smaller she actually is than what she drew, right? That's a very common symptom of eating disorders, not seeing your body correctly, right? Or the refusal to eat, or the like suicide attempts, and all of this emotion and things around food. As I mentioned, food can be very, very complicated for people, very loaded. And every family has a different culture around food, which can add to this. And so we'll talk about all those things a little bit more next time when we get into the actual disorders, right? So we'll talk about anorexia and bulimia and a couple others. Rather than get started on that, I want to take the last couple of minutes to just really quickly remind you. Hopefully you've been thinking about this. We talked about it last week, But just to remind you before I see you next, and it's actually Wednesday, don't forget that that second part of the paper is due Wednesday night, right, by 11:59 p.m. So I just want to like end by just reminding you that I'll put it up here. So that diagnosis paper part 2, right, is due on Wednesday by 11:59 p.m. on Canvas. And I purposefully did this before spring break so that you would actually be able to enjoy your spring break rather than working on it, right? Like rather than give you, I know some people might have liked to have the extra time, but I want you to actually enjoy your break. And I'm having you do this week because our next exam is next week. So just something, or in 2 weeks. So something to be thinking about, because that's coming up as well. I wanted there to be a little space between them. So be working on this. Remember, it's worth 40 points. So it is worth enough points if you really want to spend some time on it. And your source is worth 10 of those points. Okay, so remember, it needs to be an academic source. Every single one of you could use the DSM. It's a very easy one that you could use. Make sure it's the DSM-5, right? The current one. It can be an article, it can be a book other than our textbook. But that is the first thing I will look for when I open your paper. Do you have an academic source? If you don't, you'll lose 10 points right off the bat. You don't want to lose those. It's an easy 10 points. You just have to give me the citation information for it, and it can be in any format. Doesn't matter. Yeah.
Does the source have to be about the character or just the disorder?
Either, right? So it could be, let's say your character, you think they have depression, right? So you could find a book about depression or a journal article about depression, or it could be about the movie or the character if you want. Might be a little harder to find, but it could be either. Either one's fine. And you can have more than one source. If you really want to use something non-academic, just make sure you also have an academic source to go with it. Yeah.
So for the source, can you also use something like Google Scholar?
Yeah, so Google Scholar will give you articles, right? Most likely, or even books. So as long as it is something that you could find it in there. If it was an article that would be totally fine.
I'm so easy DSM fiber saying like,
Yeah.
I find more than just I could.
Yeah.
Or next week.
Yeah, you could totally do that. And as a side note, if you use the DSM, make sure you use the physical copy of it. The DSM online isn't reliable. Like a lot of people have taken it and put it online, but it's very rarely right. So what it might be a good idea is to go to our library and just take a couple of pictures of those pages, or you can check it out for, I believe, like an hour at a time. It's a reference book. There are some DSM versions online, but be a little skeptical. It's better to use the physical copy if you can. Yeah. Yeah. That one's better. Yeah, that's a pretty decent version of it, and that would work. Or like I said, you could always just go to the library and take a few pictures of like the section of it that you need. You don't have to make copies anymore. You could just take pictures. I used to have to make copies of it, right? But yeah, either one would work. Just find an academic source. If you give me like a .com or a .org or something like that, you'll get half points. But that's kind of an easy 10 points to get. So make sure you give me an academic source, a couple of pages of progress toward that final paper. It can be bulleted, but be working on it. I'll remind you and see if there are any other questions on Wednesday, but make sure you're working on it. It is due on Wednesday. So I want to make sure I remind you. Okay, so I'll stop there. I'll see you Wednesday. We'll keep going with this. Have a good rest of the day. Enjoy the rain tomorrow. More rain. Okay, bye. Yeah, what's up?